Installation of a crystal light railing on stairs is a little different from a flat surface railing. Cutting for most pieces of a stairway railing is at an angle, but once that angle has been established, assembly is similar to a flat surface railing. Begin by anchoring the top corner post, making sure that it is plumb on both sides. Lay the uncut bottom railing on the steps on the inside of the posts. Place a shim under the bottom railing to assure clearance and a straight line between the posts. Mark the bottom railing at the angle it meets the posts. Mark the posts at the height they meet the railing. If the stairs turn, make sure the post on the landing is centered for the railing down the next section of stairs. Use an uncut snap rail to measure and mark the top rail height, between 34 and 38 inches from the top of the step. Cut the bottom railing at the marked angle or pitch. The pitch should be the same now for all cuts. Cut two pieces of connecting shear block at the same pitch on both ends. The pieces should be about 5 inches long. When cut in half, they will be the right length. Starting with the top post, transfer the line where the rail crosses the face of the post to the bottom side. This will give you the location for the bottom rail shear block. Also transfer the marks at the top of the post. Slide a sample piece of bottom rail over the shear block and align the bottom of the rail to the mark. Use a transfer punch to locate the hole centers. Transfer the mark to stay square. Drill holes first 90 degrees to the post and then rotate down to pitch. Attach shear block with 3-inch screws. Next, cut a sample piece of top rail and snap pocket about 3 inches long and at the same pitch. Clamp the shear block to the sample pieces and place them on the post at the mark where the railing meets the post. Place the sample and shear block on the post at the mark where the railing meets the post. Use a transfer punch to mark the screw holes for the shear blocks. Now, transfer that punch mark to the other side so that you remain square. Drill shear block holes 90 degrees to post and then rotate the drill slightly to the pitch. Attach the shear blocks with 3-inch screws. The same procedure is used to transfer, locate, and attach the shear blocks to each side of the center posts. Now, slip the top rail sample piece over the shear block and mark where the snap pocket meets the post. The distance between the mark for the bottom of the bottom rail and this line can now be transferred to the center post to determine the height of the post. This diagram shows the points to measure and transfer to determine the cutoff height of the center post. Measure, mark, and cut the center post to pitch. Save the end of the post that you cut off to use later as a jig. It will help you determine the length of the snap pocket and the location of the center post. After measuring and cutting the bottom rails to pitch, pre-drill holes to help as a guide when drilling into the shear block. Also, drill drain holes about 6 inches from the ends and middle of the rail. Now, slip the bottom rail over the shear blocks. Using the pilot holes, drill through the blocks at an angle and screw together. To find the snap pocket length and center post location, cut a piece of snap pocket a few inches longer than the distance between the top and bottom posts. Cut one end to pitch. Transfer the dimension of the bottom rail to the snap pocket. Starting at the end, cut to pitch. Now, use the scrap piece of center post to mark the location of your center post. Add to the other side of the post mark the length of the bottom rail. This will be the overall length of the snap pocket. Pre-drill the snap pocket ends to guide the drill into the shear block. Now, slip the snap pocket into the shear blocks. Using the pilot holes, drill through the shear block at an angle and screw together. Find the marks on the bottom of the snap pocket to locate the center post. Drill pilot holes and screw the snap pocket to the center post. Re-anchor the top post, making sure it is plumb on both sides. With the bottom post over joist or backing, drill pilot holes and then anchor with the required length screws. Cut top rail to the same length as the snap pocket. Remove a screw from one end of the snap pocket. Snap on the rail and reinstall the screw. Tap down the end caps. When measuring for glass, start at the bottom of the bottom rail. Measure between posts. Next, measure from the bottom of the bottom rail to the bottom of the top rail. From the bottom of the top rail, measure between posts. Now, from the bottom of the bottom rail to the bottom of the top rail on the opposite side. Next, measure from the bottom corner of the bottom rail to the bottom corner of the top rail on the opposite side. Then measure from the bottom corner of the bottom rail to the bottom corner of the opposite top rail. For picket installation, start by measuring from the bottom of the bottom rail to the bottom of the top rail. This will be a starting point for picket length. Using this dimension, cut pickets at pitch. You can make a jig out of a scrap piece of bottom rail by screwing it to a board, clamping it to the saw's fence, and then cutting through it at pitch. You can now slide picket spacer stock through the jig to hold and cut at a perfect length and pitch. Pickets can be no further apart than 4 inches. The angle of pitch will determine the length of the spacer. Starting at the low end, insert pickets and spacers. Continue spacers and pickets until there is 8 inches or less from the top picket and post. Measure that distance and divide in half. Cut a spacer to that length. Slide all spacers and pickets to the top post and insert the short spacer at the bottom. Now, slide all pickets and spacers to the bottom. Measure the remaining space, then cut and snap in the final spacer. Most of the steps for side-mounted railing construction are the same as other stair railings, with the exception of the anchor points. First, determine the overhang of the fascia when cutting spacers. Remember to account for post size when cutting spacers. Center post spacers will be longer to keep all of the posts in line. Position corner post so the bottom rail is level. Through the top post hole, drill a pilot hole into the joist and fasten with the appropriate length screw. Now, plumb the post. This will give you the dimension for the bottom spacer. Drill a pilot hole into the joist and attach with appropriate length screws. Tighten to plumb the post. For more secure and safer railings on landings, 2 posts should be on the outside corners. The width between corner posts can be no greater than 4 inches. Set the height of the next post using a level across both corner posts. Plumb the post with the same method used before. Fasten to joist with appropriate length screws. To determine the length of the snap pocket, measure from the inside of the large post to the outside of the far corner post. Add 1/8 inch to compensate for the width of the snap pocket. With that dimension, cut the snap pocket to length with a 45-degree cut on one end. Now, measure from the outside edge on the snap pocket to the inside edge of the large post. Cut that piece 45 degrees to length. Check for a clean fit. From the bottom, drill a hole at an angle and screw through the block at the post ends. Now, clamp the corner pieces together. Drill pilot holes and screw snap rail to the corner posts. Now, clamp a 90-degree aluminum strap to the outside corner. Drill pilot holes and fasten. Do the same for the inside of the snap pocket. Next, cut a sample piece of top rail and snap pocket at 45 degrees. Snap in the pocket a short space from the front edge. This will keep the top rail in its final shape while cutting. Trim off a small amount of rail. Follow the same steps on the other end at an opposing angle. Then, cut the piece in half. You will now have 2 sample pieces. Now, snap the sample pieces into place and check for fit.
See what our miter looks like. Miter's good.
Pull back one side. From post to tip is now the length of your first rail. Remember to use a piece of snap pocket just behind the front edge when cutting the top rail. After snapping on the rail, push the other sample piece back into place for a clean fit. Measure from the front corner to the post for the next rail length. To help snap the final piece into place, file down the small point on the inside of the top rail. Now, remove the screw from the shear block. Snap on the top rail and replace the screw. Install the vinyl snap pockets and glass as you did for the standard deck railings. For more information, visit us on the web at www.crystallightinc.com or call 1-800-666-6065.